message to the billionaire class: you can't have it all.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've been waiting for all week. A new episode of The Evolution of Now is now available, and you're listening to it. So how's it going, guys? This is Chris Robinson with my buddy Jordan Speed and our senior UK correspondent, Mr. Michael Beswick. How's it going, guys?
Hey.
Hello.
You didn't stutter the intro. I'm incredibly impressed with you,
For
Chris.
once, right? It's pretty amazing. I'm pretty great like that, you know.
You are pretty great. You are pretty great.
You know, I'm becoming sort of like an Olympian in some ways, and I just fucked it up. Almost like an Olympian, but not really. But oh wow, my sound is like super high all of a sudden. Okay, so I got to change my sound a little bit. My sound was like super high suddenly. Okay, yeah, so, you know, I usually butcher the intro, but, you know, I almost stuck it. It was like a 9.5, and then I ruined it, and now it's a 7.
Yeah.
You know.
That's good.
So, I think I just failed the Olympic Games. But, so...
You're like the Ryan Lochte of podcasting.
I don't even know who that is.
I'm sure some people would get it.
But that's okay.
Okay.
Probably someone out there that actually knows anything about sports. I don't know.
He made it to the finals and just kind of failed.
He's not the one guy that's like doing like the front flips and then just like suddenly face plants or something, is he? No.
Nah, he's the guy in Brazil who lied and said that he got mugged.
Oh, that guy! Oh, I remember him now.
Speaking of epic failures. One of the things we're going to talk about today is Brexit and the progress on that.
I mean, one of the things,
that was a great
that's the
segue.
only thing we're going to be talking about. But
wait a second. But I thought things were strong and stable.
Oh yeah, cut up completely strong and fucking stable. Exactly. Strong and stable is something that's not very strong and stable. I can't think of anything right now. Caffeine. Yeah, it's just a giant fucking shit. So, okay, so. Would one of you like to do the intro bit, or?
I don't know about that, but so you guys have known about Brexit. This is a little thing in the UK going on right now, where British people are trying to be a little bit more about British, is what I've been hearing at least. What it really is the UK is leaving the European Union, and this has a lot of implications. And there's some pretty important things that are going on, and we just sort of wanted to do a nice new recap on what's been going on with the negotiations, because this has happened. What was it, 2015 or? Was it 2015 when the Brexit vote was
16.
actually? Or was it 2016?
Yeah, it was in June 23rd. Yeah.
Yep.
It seems like so long ago at this point.
It's a great year because if you look at the year-long, last year's pound value, it sort of goes steady and then it just sort of drops. On June 20th, seriously, it completely nosedives.
It was like the day after.
On the day, during the results, it just went...
Wow.
Boom. Straight down. Literally, at the start of the night, to the end of the night, I lost 10% of my money in real terms because of the pound drop. It was massive. It's ridiculous. I think it went from like $1.30 per dollar to a dollar, but I think it went like $1 to $1.30 to like $1 to $1.15 or something like that. It's a massive drop. Yeah, in a few hours. It's huge.
Yeah, so what the UK has been trying to do, well, they had a referendum back in 2016. The Tory party pushed it out there to see if anyone actually in the country would vote for
what you had.
A leave.
You had UKIP formed out of disgruntled, let's say, rather than bought, members of the Conservative Party. And Tories were losing members to UKIP, and they were pushing for us to leave the EU. In order to appease the UKIP voters to get them to vote Tory again, Cameron promised a referendum on leaving the EU. And then he actually delivered the referendum thinking, nah, it'll never pass, it'll be fine, it's just a little thing, no one really supports it. And then it passed.
And then he promptly resigned.
Yeah. So, because no one thought it would pass, no one ever bothered to think about how exactly it was going to work.
Yeah.
Or if it could work. So,
yeah.
Now we voted to leave, and of course we've been in the EU for 40 years. Our entire political and legal infrastructure is completely intertwined with the EU, and we're trying to separate. And it turns out that's quite difficult. What are you going to say, John?
Well, being an ignorant American, I just thought that Theresa May, because speaking of Cameron's resignation, I just thought that Theresa May was like the spiritual successor to him. But apparently, there could have been an election after his resignation, but the Labour Party decided not to run, and the Conservatives backed Theresa May, which is why she's the current.
In our system, you got to remember, our system isn't based around people as much as the party. So even if the Prime Minister resigns, the Tory party is the one that actually has the leadership. And so the Prime Minister is just whoever happens to lead the winning party. And the Tories were still the winning party. So when they elected their new leader, they became the Prime Minister by default. It doesn't have to be another election, technically. I think that's antiquated. Personally, I think that's antiquated. Nowadays, in the past, you got to remember this, our system is millennia old, developed a very long time. In the past, you would only know your local MP, and you'd elect your local MP, and they go off to Parliament and elect their leader. Nowadays, of course, everyone knows the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister's got much more of a, if not in function, at least in presentation, a presidential sort of appearance to them, because everyone knows who they are. We all hear them speak, and they represent their party. Nowadays, when you vote for your party, you often vote for your Prime Minister more than your MP. So I think we should change that a bit.
Yeah.
I think I would like to see us. The only thing I'd really change is that you would have a new vote every time the leader changes, as opposed to just for the general elections. But I'm getting off topic a bit now. It's the quirks of our political system.
How dare you go on a tangent on this show?
We never do that.
We totally never do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's really interesting because your system was designed sort of top down, much more recently than ours. It's got some interesting quirks and flaws and benefits that ours doesn't have. Whereas ours has grown organically from the Middle Ages onwards. It's much more. There's a lot of very archaic traditions in there, but there's a lot of things it does very well because of the fact that it's grown. It's organically grown.
Sounds like it's time for a revolution.
It is. We need to reform the thing. In fact, we have a House of Lords, which is entirely undemocratic. I'd completely replace it with something akin to your Senate.
Well, I think the House of Lords isn't even... Are they even voted in? Or
some of them are. Some of them are appointed by the Parliament, House of Commons. Some of them are hereditary.
Because
and we have religious leaders and stuff, and that it's just ridiculous and stupid.
They're essentially picked from nobles, right? Like sort of like the upper class. Well, you can't have someone that's in the lower class go into the House of Lords, right?
The original idea was you have the Commons, which represents the common people, but they didn't want to make the common people have too much power. They wanted a sort of a gap. It's kind of like the way your electoral college works, but but in our case, they've got the House of Lords. Now, the House of Lords made a bit of sense. It was sort of a sanity check on what the Commons are passing. It made sense at the time because the only people that were actually educated would be the Lords or the religious figures. And so they could function as sort of a check to see whether this is actually going to work.
Perhaps.
Nowadays, of course, that's just completely archaic because everyone's educated, and the more educated people aren't the lords, it's engineers and scientists and stuff. I'd kind of like to get back to the idea. I can't think of a good way of doing it though. I like the idea of having a panel of expert witnesses check over laws and say, is this actually going to work? Is this stupid? But I don't know how to make that work. I think the best idea would be to have something like your Senate, where you have people in there who are in there for a long time and rolling sort of elections. Just sort of slow things down and sanity check things. Yeah. I like the word sanity check.
Because you could see how well it's working for us.
Well, that's the thing. In America, what I notice is Congress tends to bounce around all over the place. Senate is usually the one that tends to put bills down when they're completely idiotic. Correct. So it kind of works okay.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, you would expect it so. But I mean, depending on the law, we do have like independent, I guess like independent bodies come in and kind of scour it to for just to
see, like
I guess for an analysis.
Yeah,
exactly. For like a stat analysis and
And you have cool things as well, like because you have a constitution, you can challenge it in court to see whether it's a constitutional or not. I like that idea as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if something is blatantly against your Bill of Rights, you can challenge it and get it repealed. I love quite a lot about the American system.
It's I was reading a bit on just a tiny bit on Theresa May because I was like, I really don't know too much about her, and I know that she. I mean, aside from like skipping in the meadows, but she's very.
She was.
I know
naughty.
now she's very.
She was such a naughty girl when she was younger. Skipping through. What was it? Wheat
Stop
fields?
by your head.
Skipping through fields of wheat. Oh my god.
Yeah, like there was a interview. That was the whole thing. There was an interview. They asked her what the naughtiest thing she'd ever done was, and she was like, "Oh, I don't know. Maybe the time that we were really young, we ran through wheat fields." And that was her naughty thing.
I mean, but let's be real. She should have just, she should have, I guess, just kind of glazed over that answer. She should have given him a non-answer. Because what kind of, as a politician, I mean, what kind of answer can you give to that? You can't be truthful. You can't be honest.
Say, you were a bit naughty in school or something like that,
I'm into a little kink. She's not gonna be open and honest about all that. But
there was this time in the bedroom with my husband. It's like, whoa, wait, no.
Way too much.
Anyway,
John.
Right. So apparently, so Theresa May was the excuse me. She was the Home Secretary. Former at this point, and she was in support of the stay, the stay side of the whole Brexit situation. But apparently, she's changed her tune since then.
Yeah, she actually supported the Remain side, and then as soon as she became Prime Minister, she suddenly supports a hard Brexit.
Well, I remember her saying she doesn't know anything about a hard or soft Brexit. She just wants a red, white, and blue Brexit. That's what she wants. God. That was actually literally something that she said at one point.
Yeah, she did. That's which is meaningless. It just doesn't mean anything.
Exactly.
It's
It's a politician speak 101, basically.
Yeah. Say something vague, meaningless, and patriotic, and hopefully everyone goes away.
Exactly. So her and the Republicans over here are very fancy bedfellows, at least.
It does. It does highlight the problem with Conservatives that they don't have an ideology. Their ideology is staying in office. And they'll do whatever it takes to stay in office. They don't actually have any overarching ideology. That's why people like Corbyn. Because he's got principles that he sticks to. Even if it's not electorally convenient, he will stick to those principles. Whereas the Tories will kind of morph to whatever they think will get them elected.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
There might be a crazy-haired gentleman over here in the United States.
Trump is a Tory. He's just a bit too stupid.
Yeah.
Like, if you took him and made him a bit more intelligent, he'd be a Tory. He'd be Theresa May. Minus a bit. But yeah, he's
minus a lot of intelligence.
Yeah, minus a lot of intelligence. He's very corporatist, very authoritarian, right-wing.
Well, I mean, he's a corporate CEO, right? And that's why he's going to be a corporatist, you know? And
that's what the Tories are. They're very corporatist. No underlying ideology, no social policy. They're just corporatists. Their function is to get into office and to make money for corporations. That's their function. They have no social policy whatsoever. They don't care.
Yeah.
Whenever gets them elected.
The comparison would be more, I think, the Democrats over here for the Tories.
The Democrats,
the UKIP party would probably be more the Republicans right now in our system.
As much as the Democrats are quite corporatist, they're more like the right-wing Labour, where they're corporatist, but they do care a little bit about equality and social issues.
Yeah,
they're paid off in terms of their economic policy, but their heart's in the right place in terms of social issues. They are anti-racism, they are anti-discrimination.
As long as it suits their needs, at least.
As long as it doesn't interfere with the corporatocracy, of course. And then, of course, you have the Bernocrat wing, which is more like new Labour.
I kind of think that you're giving the Democrats a little bit too much credit, personally. Because, I mean, if you remember back, with Hillary Clinton in this last election, she was horrible to some people. Like, there was a black girl that went to one of her, like, $3,000 to $5,000, dinners to go to this one thing, and then she tried to do a small little protest in the thing, and Hillary Clinton treated her like dog shit.
Right.
Yeah.
She was just.
I do think she cares a little bit. I just think she's so. When someone has been doing the corporate thing for so long, they don't know how to do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know how to do anything but the corporatocracy. I think that's where Hillary is now. She just doesn't. She's been doing it for so long in this particular way that she can't even consider of another way of doing it. So when Bernie comes along, who's not a corporatist, it doesn't compute. It does not compute.
Yeah.
Which I think is why a lot of the older people went with Hillary's side of things, because they've been doing it that way for so long. This new thing seems absurd. Whereas a lot of the younger people listen to it and say they're not ingrained with this old way of doing things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing to add to it too is that, wow, how do we get to Hillary? But
this
Hillary,
is a wild tangent, by the way. I don't care. It's interesting.
I have no idea how we're going to get back, guys.
Just finish up your point, and we can go back to Brexit, I guess, after that.
Sure.
I don't mind. It's interesting. I'm just saying it's a massive tangent.
Well, I would say that was in regards to what you said, Chris, about the dinner or the fundraiser. She's very bad at communicating her thoughts and ideas, and she's displayed that countless times during the election. Is just that she is really bad at actually just communicating with people on a personal basis in a public forum. And that's exactly goes back to what you said, Michael, is that if you're in the establishment for so long, you're out of touch with with everyday what people are thinking on the outside every single day and what they have to go through. So yeah, she was just really bad at that. And
this is why term limits are a thing, because eventually you get so used to doing things a certain way that when change needs to happen, you can't.
Yeah.
It's just not something you can do well. If a new method comes along for something I do a lot, I find it difficult to, like when I first started looking into American racism in the UK, the society is divided by class, very, very divided by class. So there's poor people and there's middle class people, and it'll be hard for Americans to understand it, but it's very ingrained in the culture. When I started to consider American society, it was very difficult for me to understand that it's not based on class there, it's very racist, very racial based. And it can be very difficult to get out of that when you're very ingrained in your own way of thinking. And it's kind of the same thing with a lot of the corporate Democrats, I think, that they're so ingrained in the corporate way of approaching problems that when a problem comes up, their first thought is how do we do it in a corporatocracy way, rather than thinking about more functional ways.
And it's basically the same thing as you have a hammer and every problem starts looking like nails. So, you know.
You don't think to get a different tool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy, that.
Yeah. It's always a great analogy. But back to Brexit.
Back to the actual topic.
Yeah, right.
So there's some issues here with regards to Brexit, though. Obviously, there's financial reasons, or there's financial things that have to be sorted out. There are scientific problems with it as well.
Yeah.
And did you want to go into some of the issues in regards to science and scientific research and everything?
So for science, there's three big issues. One is funding. The EU funds a lot of science research in the UK as part of like a joint EU science collaboration thing. A lot of research grants and equipment grants and things for certain labs and universities come from the EU. And it's no real idea where that money is going to come from in future. Is the UK government going to supplement it? Are we going to have some sort of deal where we keep this up? Some of the UK Brexit folks are trying to push for us to keep that collaboration with the EU, but without paying the EU anything, which I'm skeptical.
Yeah.
The second problem is travel. As you might know, labs are very specialized and research groups are quite specialized. And the higher up you get, the more specialized you are. So I had a lecturer at my university who his specialism was quantum dots, which is a quantum effect within solar panels of a particular material. It's that specialized. And my university is one of the very few places where he can do that research. And he's come from like Lithuania or something. Was it Lithuania? Was it somewhere like that? Anyway,
yeah.
What you'll do is you might have a certain specialism, and there might be a lab out in Germany that has your specialism. No problem. You can travel out there on an EU. You know, you don't need a visa. It's all you just travel out there. You can work for that lab for 6 months and supplement the lab, bring your skills back home. It's all great. And they can do the same. You know, a specialist out in Germany can come over to the UK to work in one of our labs. All good. If we leave the EU, of course, we can't do it anymore. So there may have to be some research visa or something worked out. But again, no one really knows how this is going to work yet because we did this without any idea.
Yeah.
You know, this one of those things that should have really been worked out before the referendum. We still no idea.
I mean, you did say it already to begin with that they didn't actually expect it to happen either.
Yeah, so they had no plan.
Yeah, they weren't planning on it happening. So when
people were promising the world, you're like, how are you going to deliver on that? And they just didn't have an idea.
Which kind of makes you think, like, why the hell did they actually even put this referendum out there in the first place then? You know, like, if you didn't think that anyone would go for this, why even try to do that?
It goes back to what I was saying about the Tories not having an ideology apart from getting elected. This was a move to try and get elected, to try and appease their Brexit voters.
Oh. So it's basically they put politics above, everything else.
Yeah, they put electoral politics above the country.
It's weird how that works.
It backfired.
Mm. And it's just I'd say massively so. I mean,
yeah, because now it's just a landmine. No one wants to go near it.
I mean, I'm not sure if you could have done a worse
job in the
that.
Labour conference. The Labour conference has just happened. Every year, Labour meets at a conference. All the councillors and activists and stuff get together, and they decide how the party is going to be run for the next year. And Corwin did a speech and curiously didn't mention Brexit. Not much, anyway. And it's very clever because no one wants to make promises about Brexit because no one knows what's going to happen. It's a landmine. No one wants to go near it, including the people that are responsible for dealing with it.
Yeah, and that was why there was like a crisis right after the former prime minister stepped down. He resigned, Cameron, because there were so many people like up to like, oh, is this guy gonna like become the new prime minister? Is this guy going to? Is this person? Is this person? And like they kept on just like jumping ship. It's like, oh no, it's totally not gonna be. Oh, I'm gonna resign. Goodbye. And then it just
Theresa
sort of
May's,
like fell into.
No one wanted to go near it. Theresa May was the only one who would scrabble for power.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Tories kind of tore each other to pieces over that. It was quite funny.
At least it had that.
No one wants to go near Brexit.
Yeah.
Because it's just a mess.
Yeah. Now, I did want to eventually play this one sound here that I had, though. Like, this has a little bit to do with the scientific research and everything, but this is more of a financial equation here. Like, part of the reason why the Conservatives were talking about in any regards, or the UKIP party really was talking about leaving, one of their excuses was that financially we shouldn't be paying all this money to the EU, and that if we leave the EU, then we can take all of that money that we send to the EU and then use it on our own personal programs.
Before you start it, there was an infamous bus. I'm sure you've seen the bus, which had on the side of it, we send 350 million a week somehow to the EU. Let's spend it on the NHS instead, which is our healthcare system.
Yeah.
Of course, as Chris is going to show, that isn't quite accurate.
Yeah. Like, they did say that they were going to do that, but then afterwards, after the referendum actually even passed,
the day after,
they were like, yeah, we're not necessarily going to put all that money towards the NHS.
Amazing, because Brexit happened, and immediately the day after, it was like, oh yeah, you promised to do this, so how are you going to do it? It's like, well, I didn't promise that, didn't quite promise that. I mean, I'm not saying that.
It was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and Brexit was a farce for the political establishment
everywhere,
right?
Yeah.
in the UK, like, of course, like you said, like you both said, they just didn't expect it to actually happen, and yeah, it was just poor calculation on David Cameron, and well, now they have to figure out what to do. It really sucks.
Pretty much.
I like the Liberal Democrats and myself, which is, once they work out what exactly the Brexit deal is going to be, then have another referendum on it.
Yeah.
Mm.
But let's get to the sound, though. This guy, I think he's from the BBC. He explains some of the facts on what is actually going to the EU from the UK in terms of money. So this is a couple minutes long, but I think it's pretty important. He explains it pretty well.
We all know what this is. It's a £20 note. And this is what £361 million looks like in £20 notes. And if you believe the headlines, that's what we're handing over to the EU every week. Or is it? Well, the short answer is no. The UK doesn't hand over this much money to the EU. Let me explain. In 1984, Margaret Thatcher negotiated the rebate, an instant discount taken from the money the UK pays before it's sent. In 2014, the rebate was worth £85 million a week, leaving